Hello and welcome to another line exploration. Today we're looking at the fourth line of the 30th gate, and this fourth line is a classic. It's called Burnout, and this is, as far as fourth line goes, a classic keynote. And we kind of touched on this tendency not long ago when we looked at the 13th gate in the fourth line, which is called fatigue. So this is a theme that runs through fourth lines. The fourth line is the beginning of the upper trigram, of course. It's the process of externalization. The 30 in the fourth line can make other people sick. It can make them emotionally unstable, and they are less likely to show evidence of it for themselves, but they can have a deep impact on people around them. In the lifetime learning, an unrealistic pace that begs misfortune. If you're constantly externalizing feelings, you're putting an enormous pressure on your emotional system, on your nervous system. If you are defined emotionally, then you're only going to put those feelings out in a very particular way. Nonetheless, it still means you are putting them out the moment that you have your opportunity to do so. Fourth line, opportunity is all about opportunity. So if you're a generator and you're asked to respond, you're going to respond by externalizing those feelings immediately, instantaneously. This is where you're going to be at, because this is the pressure that comes in that. The fourth line here with this clinging fire and the desire. The fourth line here is an experience junkie. These are people who must have a new experience. They can only develop their feelings through experience, and they must share their feelings with someone else. This is the collective. Sharing is, I was going to say, it's their middle name. Well, you know what I mean. The fourth line is fixed and one-tracked. So here, it's all about having that experience and finding a new experience, being fixed on having a new experience. And if they're fixed on having an experience, but they're not entering into it correctly, burnout can be the result. If they're going from one experience to another, and that can also result in burnout, because part of the experiential way, and yes, it is about having an experience and then another experience and so on. That is built into the cycle, but also there is time for reflection. This is built into the cycle too, in order for the lessons of the experience to be assimilated into the collective. So we have another exaltation fixed in Pluto. So we don't have this in the world at the moment, but I'm going to read it, of course, anyway. A compulsive and hyperactive nature that carries all the earmarks of burnout, but doesn't necessarily arrive at it. A positive outcome is often assisted through analysis. A highly energized feelings that may lead to emotional collapse. Ra said this is a classic situation. You have a parent with 30 in the fourth line, and they have a child with an undefined emotional system, and the child becomes hyperactive and gets sent into analysis. This is how the 30 in the fourth line really impacts other human beings more than on themselves. This is what I said in the beginning about how the 30 in the fourth line can make others sick. Now, it's not done consciously and on purpose. It's part of the mechanic. Ra said that he had a friend with this activation, and whenever that person visited him, Ra would get very uncomfortable. He'd notice after 10 or 15 minutes, he'd have to get up and do something, have an experience of some kind. Now, he suddenly had the feeling that he had to do this. So these people can be really obsessive about living out their feelings in that sense, but it's what they do to others that can be so powerful. And Ra said that it sounds really nice that you've got the earmarks of burnout, but you don't necessarily come to it, and it can be assisted through analysis. Yeah, lovely. Except that this Pluto is not active in our experience right now. The detriment, an uncontrollable expansion with the inevitable bursting of the bubble, uncontrollable feelings and accompanying emotional outbursts. And Ra said here that it is not unhealthy to burn out. We might consider it to be negative, but how much of that is our own prejudice and our own conditioning? And there are different ways of looking at burnout too. Imagine you can't necessarily externalize a single feeling for your whole life. in this cyclical circuit, which is about beginnings and ends of things. So you've got the experience, but you've never got the ability to externalize it as a fourth line. Well, and that could be very difficult. That could lead to a feeling of burnout, but that could also lead to the end of the cycle where the feeling is burnt out. That's what ends the cycle. You've had this feeling, say, the thing that Ra used, he so often went to, is that you want to make love to somebody, and over the years you try and you never manage to get it together. It never works, and then eventually you just get to the point where the feeling burns out, and you never want to see them again, and it's gone. But it doesn't mean that you have to burn out and die. It's not that sense of the burnout. But what it does say is that the only way in which that burnout is going to be healthy for you as a process is that actually if you're burning out with your friends, because this fourth line is all about its friends, its network. Fourth line. If you burn out your friends or you burn out your friendships, then you're coming to the end of a process and the feeling is over. And that can be healthy if you've entered into that correctly in the first place. In that case, burnout can be your ally. And this can be quite a difficult line to get your head around because it sounds harsh somehow. It sounds quite an aggressive fourth line. That it can impact other people in this negative way, that it's burning out its friendships, that it's like, wow, this isn't really what we've come to think of as our friendly networking, all about the other fourth line. So maybe this is kind of like shifting our perspective slightly as we examine this one. So the grounding is through gate 29 in the fourth line that is called directness. And it says that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. You might think that this directness could prevent the 30 in the fourth line from burning out, and it may, but also if you have the line, you're equipped to deal with the line. This is something that's always important to remember about any of these lines that sound difficult, some of them. If you've got the line, you're equipped to deal with the line. Doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Doesn't matter what they say or project or anything else onto you. If you've got this line, fine. It's the conditioning that we have that can make it seem so bad. And as Ra said, burnout is not necessarily bad. I mean, we want a fever to burn itself out, don't we? Because then it gets rid of the pathogen. So perhaps burning out a relationship is good if that relationship was about expectation, or even if it had just come to the end of its time, because this is a cyclical process. So the moon is still in gate 46, and so we still have the channel with the earth in gate 29, the channel of discovery, making commitments, releasing expectation, and seeing what comes through this serendipitous channel. Next, we move into the splenet cycle of the moon's journey, beginning, as always, with gate 18 at 1929. And this is the logical collective gate of correction, the mirror to our sun over on the other side in gate 30. The lesson that can be found in gate 18 is that correction isn't personal. It isn't meant to be turned inward, and it isn't meant to be directed at anybody else externally either. It's about seeing something in the pattern that needs to be corrected. And it's a tricky one because the logic circuit can be deeply critical. And often we've been conditioned to turn that against ourselves. If no one else is criticizing us, then we can always find something within us that they just hadn't spotted yet. So this is a gate where we could actually learn to be gentle with ourselves. And it leads into gate 48 at 6:46, the gate of depth, the well. And we know from previous explorations that this gate can fill itself with the mundane and the trivial, as well as the philosophical and truly valuable, depending on what you consider to be valuable or trivial, really. It's all up for grabs, isn't it? It's also interesting with the 48 and the 18 because it's the stream of taste that runs up there. So it's about correcting what is your taste or what is to your taste. And what you're correcting might not be for everybody. The way you're correcting it might not be for everybody. But if it's for you and it's to your taste and you're not projecting it out to make it somebody else is wrong, then it's fine, because it's about things. It's about things being wrong. It's something in the pattern you have spotted that needs correction. That's what is going on here with this particular activation. Anyway, that's us for today. Thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And as always, love yourself, as Ra would say. Love yourself and go gently. Bye-bye for now.